The year is 2100 BC. You are standing inside the walls of Uruk, the largest city on Earth. Somewhere between 40 Zhuozerand and 50 Zhuozerand people live within these walls, in a flat, sun-baked plain between two great rivers, in the land the Greeks would later call Mesopotamia. The walls around you stretch for nearly 10 kilometers. They were built under the reign of a king whose name would echo for 4,000 years, Gilgamesh. But the songs written about him describe gods and monsters and immortality. They tell you almost nothing about what it actually felt like to wake up here, to work here, to eat here. What did a normal day look like in the city of Gilgamesh? Not for the king, but for the tens of thousands of people who kept this place running. The sky is still dark when Uruk begins to move. Before the sun clears the flat horizon of the southern plain, you can already hear it, the low scrape of wooden doors being pulled open. The short clipped sounds of a language that has not been spoken aloud in 4,000 years, Sumerian, precise and structured, filling narrow streets made of packed dirt and dried brick. The city does not wake gently. It wakes on a schedule set by the temple, and the temple runs the day. Your house is made of mud brick. Almost every house in Uruk is. The walls are thick, sometimes half a meter, which keeps the interior cooler during the punishing midday heat and holds warmth during the cold months. The rooms are small and low-ceilinged. There are no windows in the modern sense, only small openings near the top of the walls that let in light and air, but keep out the worst of the sun. The floor is packed earth, sometimes covered with reed mats. A clay hearth sits near the center of the main room. This is where cooking happens, where the household gathers, where the fire is kept alive through the night. There is no running water in your home. Water is collected from the canal network that threads through and around the city, fed by the Euphrates. Women and older children carry it in clay vessels in the early morning. The canal system is not purely for drinking. It also moves goods, irrigates fields, and serves as the city's primary infrastructure for transport and waste. The smell near the canals in the early morning is layered. River water, animal dung, soaked reeds, wood smoke from neighboring homes. The city smells like the work it does. Donkeys are already moving in the streets, loaded with bundles, with clay jars, with bales of reed. They are the primary transport animal in Uruk, and they are everywhere. Their calls mix with the sound of children, the bleat of goats penned against a wall, and the distant low sound of the temple horn signaling the first ritual of the day. The city is already in motion. It does not wait for the sun. By the time the sky turns fully light, the working city is already deep into its first hours. The largest structure in Uruk is the ziggurat, a massive stepped platform of mud brick rising above the flat cityscape, visible from kilometers away across the open plain. At its top stands the Temple of Anu, the sky god, and the Temple of Inanna, goddess of love and war. These are not simply religious spaces, they are the administrative center of the city. The temple owns land. The temple stores grain. The temple manages labor, distributes rations, and records every transaction on clay tablets pressed with a reed stylus. The writing system used here, cuneiform, is not new in 2100 BC, but it is still being refined. It is one of the most consequential technologies ever developed, and it is running Uruk's economy. Scribes are at work before most of the city is fully awake. In the temple complex, young men trained from childhood sit on low benches, pressing wedge-shaped marks into soft clay. They record deliveries of barley, counts of cattle, the number of workers assigned to irrigation projects, the quantities of oil and wool distributed as rations. These are not literary texts, they are accounting documents. The earliest written records from Mesopotamia are not poems or laws, they are receipts. The bureaucracy that sustains Uruk runs entirely on documentation, and the scribes are its engine. Below the temple hierarchy, the city is organized around labor. Workers who serve the temple receive their wages in daily rations, roughly a liter of barley per day for a standard worker, more for skilled tradespeople, less for the unskilled or the very young. The barley goes to the household where it is ground, mixed with water, and fermented or baked into the two foods that appear at virtually every meal in Uruk, flatbread and beer. Beer here is not a luxury. It is a caloric staple. It is safer to drink than canal water, It stores, it travels, and it is produced in quantities that would seem staggering in a modern city. The temple manages its production. The workers depend on it. Craftsmen work in dedicated areas of the city. Potters operate large kilns near the edges of residential zones, producing the standardized vessels, the beveled rim bowl, that appear in such enormous numbers across Mesopotamian sites that archaeologists have debated for decades whether they served as ration containers, molds, or offering vessels. Weavers work long hours, mostly women, producing textiles that become one of Uruk's main exports. Metal workers shape copper tools and simple bronze implements. Leather workers, reed basket makers, bricklayers, and boat repair workers all operate in a city where nearly every profession is already organized, registered, and connected to the temple's distribution system. Outside the walls, farmers are at work in the irrigated fields. The flat plain around Uruk is not naturally fertile in the way river deltas can be. Mesopotamia depends almost entirely on human-managed irrigation. Canals branching from the Euphrates feed the fields. Workers maintain the canal walls, clear the silt, and manage the flow of water to specific plots. Without continuous maintenance, the system collapses. The city's food supply is not a given. It is an engineering project, renewed every season. By midday, the heat is intense and the city adjusts. Work that can be done in shade moves there. Animals rest. The pace of street traffic slows. This is when the midday meal happens. Not a break from work so much as a pause built into the rhythm of a city that wakes very early and works until the light fails. The meal is simple by any standard. Flatbread made from barley flour, baked that morning on a clay griddle set over the hearth. Dried fish, the rivers and the marshes to the south provide it in abundance, and it can be preserved with salt and stored. Onions, garlic and leeks are cultivated in garden plots within and around the city. Dates from palm trees lining the canals provide sugar and calories. And beer, always beer. Drunk from clay cups or through long reed straws, directly from communal jars. Meat is not common at the daily table for most households. Goats and sheep are valuable primarily for their milk and wool while alive. Cattle are work animals. Pigs are kept in some households and do appear in the temple ration lists. But the daily protein for most Uruk residents comes from legumes, lentils, chickpeas, and from the fish that come up from the southern marshes. A worker's meal is filling and adequate. It is not varied. The same foods appear in roughly the same proportions every day, every season, with minor adjustments for what the canals and fields produce in a given year. Buying and selling in Uruk does not involve coin. Coinage will not appear in this region for another 1,500 years. Exchange is conducted through weighed silver, through barter, or through the temple's internal accounting system. A transaction might be recorded on a clay tablet, a quantity of grain exchanged for a quantity of oil, witnessed and sealed with a cylinder seal pressed into the wet clay. These seals, carved stone cylinders rolled across the surface of a tablet to leave a unique impression, are personal identification tools, legal signatures, and objects of craft all at once. They are also among the most beautiful objects produced in this city. The afternoon belongs to the temple and to the street. The great courtyard in front of the ziggurat is the closest thing Uruk has to a public square. It is not a leisure space in any modern sense. It is a working space. Priests move through it. Offerings are carried to the upper platforms. Scribes receive deliveries of goods. But it is also where the city's public rituals unfold and where the presence of the divine is most visibly maintained. The religion of Uruk is not private or personal. It is civic and structural. The gods own the land. The king administers it on their behalf. The temple makes the arrangement operational. Inanna's temple is not only a place of worship, it is also a redistribution center, a storage facility and an employment hub. The priests who manage it are among the most educated, most powerful, and most connected people in the city. Some of them are women. The role of high priestess in Mesopotamian cities is documented from this period, and it is a position of genuine institutional authority. The rituals carried out daily involve music, incense made from resins traded from distant mountains, offerings of grain and oil, and formal recitations in a language already beginning to diverge from everyday Sumerian. Sacred Sumerian is becoming its own register. distinct from the language of the street. Justice in Uruk at this period is administered through the temple and through royal authority. There are no stone-inscribed law codes yet. Hammurabi's famous code is still 3 centuries away. But legal norms exist, and disputes over property, debt, and inheritance are settled by temple officials or by the local assembly of elders that appears in cuneiform texts as a recognized body. Contracts are tablets. Witnesses press their seals. The archive is the courthouse. In the afternoon, the trade quarter near the river docks is at full activity. Boats arrive carrying goods that Mesopotamia cannot produce locally. Timber from the Zagros Mountains or from Lebanon, copper from Anatolia or Oman, lapis lazuli from what is today Afghanistan, carnelian from the Indus Valley. Uruk is a hub on a network of long-distance trade routes that stretch across an enormous geography. In return, it sends out grain, textiles, and manufactured goods. The merchants who manage this trade are a distinct professional class. They operate with temple credit, they keep their own records, and they move regularly between cities. Some of them speak multiple languages. Children are visible everywhere in the afternoon streets. Many of them are working alongside their parents. Boys attached to scribal training will spend part of their afternoon in a school connected to the temple, copying lists of words and numbers onto tablets, then smoothing the clay and trying again. The curriculum is largely memorization, lists of animals, plants, stones, professions, and mathematical tables. Education is practical and direct. It produces scribes, not philosophers. The sun begins to angle low over the flat plain, and the city starts its turn toward evening. Farmers come in from the fields through the main gates, driving animals, carrying tools. The canal traffic slows. The smell of cooking intensifies as hearths are lit in households across the city. Barley porridge, dried fish reheated in clay pots, bread warming near the fire. The city's residential quarters are dense. Houses share walls. Courtyards open onto narrow lanes. Neighbors are in constant proximity. Sound carries, smell carries. The daily rhythm of one household is always audible to the next. Lighting in Uruk after dark is modest. Clay lamps filled with rendered animal fat, sesame oil, fish oil, or rendered tallow give off a low yellow light. They are placed in niches in the walls on ledges near doorways. They do not illuminate a room the way a modern lamp does. They mark the presence of a lit household in the dark. Outside, the streets are not lit. The processional routes near the temple are maintained with torch holders on festival nights, but on an ordinary evening, the city outside the doorways is dark and largely still. The family unit in Uruk is the basic organizational structure of the city. Beyond the temple's institutional households, which are large, managed collectively, and employ significant numbers of workers, the residential city is organized around nuclear and extended family groups. A household might include parents, unmarried children, a married son and his wife, and perhaps a domestic worker or two registered with the temple. Property passes through family lines. Inheritance is documented on tablets. Marriage is a legal arrangement, recorded, witnessed, sealed. The household is an economic unit as much as it is a family. After the meal, the household closes in on itself. The door is sealed, a heavy wooden panel latched from inside. There are no public lanterns in the residential streets. The city at night is a different place than the city at midday. Night in Uruk is quiet at the edges and active near the center. The temple complex does not entirely sleep. Night watch priests maintain the sacred fires. The ziggurat platform, visible from a distance even in darkness, has a faint glow from the ritual lamps maintained at the upper shrine. But this is not a city that conducts much formal business after dark. There is no nightlife infrastructure, no tavern district, no organized evening entertainment. The clay tablets that survive from this period do not describe nights in the way they describe days. Night is the absence of the working city. Guard posts are positioned at the main city gates. Uruk's walls, those great fired brick fortifications attributed to Gilgamesh himself, make the city defensible but not perfectly secure from within. Crime in the ancient city is documented. Theft, property disputes, violent incidents appear in the legal texts. There is no organized police force in the modern sense. Patrolling at night is done by temple-appointed guards near the major structures and by the informal vigilance of neighborhoods that know each other's rhythms too well to miss something out of place. The canals are active at night for a different kind of traffic. Small boats move goods under cover of darkness, not necessarily illicitly, but practically. The canals are cooler at night. The current is steadier, and a boat operator who needs to move a load to the next settlement before the morning market might prefer to travel before dawn. The sound of a wooden hull scraping against a stone quay in the dark is one of the unremarkable night sounds of a river city. The sky above Uruk is exceptional by any standard, no artificial light for hundreds of kilometers. The Milky Way is fully visible. The Sumerians are sophisticated astronomers. Their observations of planetary movements, recorded on clay tablets, are some of the earliest systematic astronomical records in human history. The priests who track the movements of Venus and Mars are not simply performing religious duties. They are accumulating data that will be used for agricultural calendars, omen interpretation, and eventually the mathematics of celestial mechanics. The sky is a document that Uruk reads every night. Most of the city sleeps before midnight. The working day begins before dawn. The body calculates accordingly. What Uruk built in 2100 BC is not easy to summarize, because most of it became invisible, absorbed so thoroughly into the structure of every civilization that came after that, it no longer appears to have an origin. Writing, the organized city, the managed agricultural surplus, the long-distance trade network, the legal contract, the standardized weight and measure, the professional scribe, the institutional archive, all of these are running. In functional form inside the walls of Uruk at the time, Gilgamesh is said to have ruled. The city is not yet Rome, not yet Athens, not yet anything those later cities will claim to have invented. It is the earlier thing, the structure on which those later claims rest. What is fragile here is also clear. The food supply depends on continuous canal maintenance. One season of neglect, one major flood, one prolonged drought shifts the calculation drastically. The city depends on trade goods, stone, metal, timber, that it cannot produce and must import from very long distances. The administrative system that manages the city's resources is entirely dependent on a class of trained scribes whose education takes years. Lose the scribes, lose the records, and the city's memory of who owns what, who owes what, who is owed what disappears with them. The walls hold, the canals flow, the tablets accumulate in the temple archive. Tomorrow, the city wakes before dawn and does all of this again. If you want to walk through more cities that shaped the ancient world, cities that most people have never thought about, cities that ran on systems stranger and more sophisticated than most history books describe, the next one might surprise you. Drop a suggestion below and we'll go there.